functional medicine, we talk about autoimmunity kind of in a big picture perspective. It's not something that falls on your head one day. It evolves over years to decades under the right conditions. And the right conditions are actually the wrong conditions. They're the conditions in our bodies that don't optimize how the body runs or healing, right? So this, when we are under these conditions that allow autoimmunity to evolve, there is eventually a loss of tolerance and regulation. So the immune system forgets the rules, and it forgets that it's supposed to, attack this thing and leave that thing alone, right? So how does this happen? Well, there's multiple factors involved. It's all very complex. Like in all the years I've studied medicine and science, like I've never found these single approaches to disease or healing to ever really be truth, right? So what are the factors that are involved? Well, we always break it down into genetics and the environment. So let's talk about the autoimmune triad and break down what that is, okay? In functional medicine, we think 3 things have to be in place for you to get an autoimmune disease. These aren't the only 3 things, but we think these 3 have to be present for that process to evolve over time. First and foremost, genetics. You can't help the genetics you got from your parents, but it's not as simple as saying, well, I have the genes, so I'm going to get these diseases, right? If you went and did your 23andMe and you got your top 10 diseases that you're going to get, you're not going to get all 10 of those, right? Because it's not as simple as just having the genes. Genes have to be turned on and off. And this is actually a fascinating area of medicine and science that we call epigenetics. It's this study of how genes are turned on and off based on the information from the environment. So you have to have the right genes, and those right genes have to be turned on. Number 2, membrane permeability. And by membrane, I'm talking about the lining of your GI tract. This is something we talk about in functional medicine, integrated medicine a lot. We call it hyperpermeable gut, leaky gut. And here's what it is. This is a topic for a different discussion, but how I will explain it to you is that here's a normal situation. These are the cells lining your GI tract, and up here in the white space is the space within the tube of your GI tract. When you eat, food comes down this space, finds one of these fingers. If that interaction between the receptor and whatever came into the body is a safe interaction, that thing will get pulled into the cell. So now you've passed your first checkpoint to make sure that thing was safe to enter. The second checkpoint is right here where this dark red line is. This is where the immune system sits. And it's the second checkpoint to make sure the thing that came into the cell is actually okay to get into the body by getting into the blood. This is a normal GI tract where all the cells are nicely adhered to each other. If something wants to get into the body, it has to go through a cell. Here's what leaky gut looks like, and there is microscopic evidence of this. There's spaces between the cells because the proteins have broken down, and now things that are going through the lumen of the GI tract can leak in. They bypass that first checkpoint, and they hit the immune system right here. And so things that we may not want to be in the body can now maybe get in. The other thing that's happening is the immune system's getting bombarded by information. We think that this is really one of the key causes of not just autoimmunity, but also food sensitivities and food reactions. So you can see how in an abnormal situation where the cells have moved apart from each other and created spaces, that unwanted things may enter the body at a much higher rate than this situation. The third thing that needs to be in place is a trigger. Something has to tip the system over so that that autoimmune process really can start blooming and taking over. So let's talk about what the triggers are. So think of triggers as factors that provoke symptoms, okay? Now you may think back to your own autoimmune disease or MS and think about, all of a sudden I lost my vision, and that was the first sign of MS, but preceding that, perhaps you had a really stressful event, right? Work was stressful, loss of a loved one, something. that maybe was the trigger that pushed you over the edge. Now, these triggers are what we think about as the imbalances or root causes of autoimmunity, okay? So I'm gonna kind of break them down. Of course, this list is not exhaustive. I'm just giving you a few examples. Triggers can be stress and trauma, whether it's emotional or physical, because that revs up your body and your immune system, and the immune system starts getting forgetful and dysregulated and loses tolerance. Poor nutrition. This could be artificial foods that we eat. We all eat them. They're all over the place. Or food sensitivities that might be, at play that we're not aware of. Poor sleep, chronic sleep, loss of sleep over long periods of time. Many of us sleep 5 to 6 hours and think that's normal. Exposure to man-made toxins, right? What happens is when this stuff on the left side of the screen happens, it starts throwing off our body systems, such as the microbiome. This is a collection of friendly bugs in our large intestine that do a lot to keep our health intact and our immune systems ticking away normally. So when these things on the left happen, your microbiome can get disrupted. I mean, there's many reasons why that can happen, but this is a root cause of autoimmunity as well. We know in autoimmune disorders that the microbiome is not in balance. Another system that goes out of balance is the mitochondria. These are the small parts of your cells within each cell that produce energy for us, and they have a lot to say about cell lifespan and how much energy we produce for the body. So they're very foundational. So when the mitochondria are damaged, that can lead to autoimmune diseases. And then hormone imbalance, which can happen for many reasons. For example, chronic stress spikes your cortisol. And when cortisol gets spiked, thyroid can get suppressed. So everything starts going out of balance. And all of these things are triggers that, again, drive that autoimmune process.